Welcome back to Alchemy Custom Weaponry. Hey y'all, happy that you're here. We're continuing our path on the road to the 1911, now on the Colt Model 1902. Before we get too far into this, I want to make sure we give our thanks where needed.
Well, yeah, and if you haven't watched the first video, we'll have it linked here somewhere to go watch the 1900, because we are going from the 1900 all the way up to the 1911. And I want to give a very big thank you to Ken Brown, who is a very good Cabot and Alchemy customer, who is loaning us some pistols from his personal collection that have all been professionally restored by Turnbull Restoration, including this fabulous 1902 here. And he actually acquired this from Michael Gerner, who is an avid Colt collector who did help Turnbull locate and source a lot of the original pistols to get the original roll marks for the reproduction. And if you look at very nice versions of refinished Turnbull guns, you're probably going to be looking at the pistols that we have here. Awesome collection. This is why we have the museum/Michael Jackson gloves on, so that we can handle them and not mar up the surface. So thank you, Ken. Thank you, Michael.
Absolutely. And also, I think it's important to note that the guns in front of us are our own guns.
Yes.
Nick and I both have 1902s. So it was a fun project to finally get these guns out and in front of camera and together. So with that, let's continue our story. Again, watching the 1900 video is going to be important. I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to recap it for you. You need to go watch it if you haven't done so already. So basically, the 1902 is an improved 1900, but there's a little bit more to it. So Colt begins to take feedback from the military as the officers want these certain things. They really want a longer grip. They want more rounds in the magazine. They want the ability to work the gun somewhat one-handed. Also, they kind of say, hey, we would wish the gun was balanced a little bit better. Colt said, suck it up. These are the forgings.
This is how it is.
This is the forgings we have.
Yeah.
So it's very fun. But of course, Colt being Colt, they were going to retain as much as they could to make as much money as they can. Before we get into these guns, there were two different versions of the Colt 1902. One was at that time known as the Sporting, but became known as the Sporting, and one became the military model. The Sporting model is, I'm telling you, essentially a legitimately just upgraded 1900.
Yep.
It kept the same frame contour, magazine, virtually the same. Some of the new changes they made on them, but this was a way that Colt could basically retain some of that tooling they had for the 1900. They were kind of in parallel production with all these other Colt automatic pistols, but they were kind of one of the first to bow out. They were they ended production around 1907-ish, so there aren't a ton of those Sporting models made. The next one would be the Colt Model 1902 military. All three of these are Colt 1902 militaries. This has the longer grip. It has a lanyard loop. It has a slide stop. It has a little bit different way of breaking the gun down. We'll talk about in a little bit. And a few other small modifications, stocks, that sort of thing.
Now, one of the things to mention is that the barrel tilting mechanism is retained from the 1900, which is a dual link system. So the 1911, where we eventually get to, is a single link system where the barrel actually is a tilt barrel. These pistols, and we weren't able to do this with the 1900 just because it's so refinished, we don't want to rack the slide. But as you're actually racking the slide on these pistols, man, these gloves make it tough. The entire barrel assembly actually goes back and down in a parallel fashion to the frame, where a modern 1911 has one link and tilts. And those links will be important in the development of the pistol from the 1900 to the 1911.
Right, and with that too, we sort of kind of glossed over that with the 1900, as you mentioned, because that example of the 1900 is so nice. I did not want to disassemble it, potentially scratch something, especially because, again, and we'll show you in a second, there's a difference in taking these two guns apart, the 1902 and the 1900. And the way you have to take a 1900 apart is a little bit sketchy if you're trying to make sure you don't mar the gun up.
Yeah.
So I will actually be showing you now that I have a gun I can show it on a lot easier, I'll be showing you how that barrel system works, and we can kind of discuss some of the shortcomings and also some of the advantages of this type of barrel system. But before we get to that, a couple other things. Recapping from the end of the 1900 video, we are now introducing the inertial firing pin system. So the firing pin does not run the length of the firing pin chamber. It requires a smack from the hammer to ignite a round, which means now we can carry hammer down with no issues, which was common on these. The 1902 would also remain in manufacture until 1928.
That's a long run for a gun like this.
And there's a reason it went out in 1928, because a certain extremely badass gun came out in 1929 that replaced it. Are you familiar?
I'm drawing a complete blank.
Super.
Oh.
38.
Oh, well, there we go.
Yes, new caliber, new gun.
Wow.
They decided they wanted to keep,
ditch it.
Yeah, and this gun, the tooling at this point, it was the only gun that retained its tooling.
Yeah.
So they wanted to move everything to the 1911 platform. So 1902 to 1928, I'll be honest, for a design that let's call a spade, for a design that was relatively outpaced about as quickly as it was made, this gun stayed in manufacture for a long time. It was the 38 caliber automatic that Colt produced, along with the 1903 pocket hammer. All right, y'all. So we, of course, want to be able to shoot in this series, right? We want to be able to bring you these historic guns firing. Here's the problem with 38 ACP specifically. You have to have everything hand-loaded, and I did not have enough time.
They don't make it anymore, yep.
Yeah, I did not have enough time to get some hand-loaded 38 ACP, but I did have this vintage box from Old Western Scrounger. Very interesting logo there of a robber. For $80, I found, in the whole time that I've been just walking around gun stores. This is the first box of 38 auto that I've actually found. So here's the problem. This stuff is loaded off of super brass. And I don't know if it's the fact that I'm just sketched or I don't want to blow up my historic investment. I want to make sure that this is going to work. And we just thought we'd bring you along for the ride. So we have a chronograph set up. I've got 2 or 3 rounds loaded up in a Super 38. So I have this new manufactured Colt Super 38 that I actually built up. And we know for a fact this can handle Super 38. I usually shoot like a 1,250 feet per second load. So as long as this doesn't exceed traditional Super 38 velocities, which I do not think it will, we should be fine testing it in this gun. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's bend down here and see if we can't get ourselves some data. 1066, okay.
1051. 1081.
Okay, so she's running a little bit, almost right under 1,100 feet per second. The 38 ACP for these was a little lighter than that. It's, I say we go for it.
All right, you go first.
Okay. So we're going to cut over to the range. We're going to shoot the 1902 military. We're going to cut down range exactly. We're going to shoot the 1902 military. Little nervous, not going to lie to y'all, but hell, you only live once, okay? And if you ruin a 1902 in the process, well...
Or a face.
We call it a light... Oh, yeah, of course.
Because remember, dual link system here.
With the front locking lug.
With the front locking lug.
Okay, I'm kind of excited. Let's go. Hello, viewers. So we have now determined this is close enough. It is a touch warmer, and I mean 10 to 20 feet per second warmer than factory 38 ACP. So with that, we're going to try it. You know what? You never know until you know. So I've got my 1902. Got it loaded up with 5 rounds in the original magazine. We're going to just shoot it. I'm pretty nervous, to be honest. It's loaded pretty nice. I'm going to blade off, shoot it one-handed, as you should. Yeah, so that gun is not my favorite gun that I've ever shot. That is like the worst shooting I've ever done. Oh. The slide, as they mentioned, the slide is so unbalanced when you get out there. It's kind of hard to see. Obviously, in this lighting too, the front sight's virtually not there. So it's a fun gun. It made it through shooting, which is awesome. But I certainly understand everything that they were struggling with. The gun does feel a little awkward in your hand. It doesn't point as nicely as a 1911, a new 1911. Obviously, as I mentioned before, that short trigger, I'm not a big fan of any short trigger. I tend to sink the gun a little bit more. And that front sight is virtually non-existent, so I struggled a little bit on that one. That's not my proudest shooting ever, but I got to shoot my 1902, so that's cool. That is like the worst shooting I've ever done, boys and girls, but guess what? It's cool to get to see history actually work. When we consider actually shooting the gun, and now that I've shot a couple, two mags through it, whatever it is, I 1000% understand where they were coming from. The gun is extremely unbalanced. The trigger is good, but the trigger is so short that it feels like I'm sinking in too much and I have too much movement here. The sights, of course, that doesn't get rectified until, well after the Second World War on these guns. But you definitely can understand, especially in the balance perspective, that's not a hot cartridge, but you saw it was really kind of moving.
It was moving. There was the like I was saying, the report that gun makes is very unique.
Yeah,
that did not sound like a 38 Super. That did not sound like 45 ACP or 9mm. It sounded like a mini howitzer. Like,
yeah, it's cool stuff. But this is another reason why, like bringing it to the modern age. Another reason why the 6-inch 1911s are just not the way to go, in my opinion, is because the balance is off on the gun dramatically. So, anyways, there was a reason they wanted to make these changes. I just saw that reason because I'm actually a pretty decent one-handed shooter. I think you'll even.
He's a great one-handed shooter. Yep.
And that is probably the worst shooting I've ever done. But hey, guess what? I had a hell of a time doing it. It's kind of like procreating. Even if you don't do it well, it sure is fun to do. So with that, let's head back in the studio. All right, y'all. I of course wanted to show you this on the Model 1900. The reason we didn't is, as we've said multiple times, we did not want to scratch Ken's gun. Did not want to be responsible for that. However, I have my own gun, so I thought we would show you the parallel locking barrel. So, of course, this is the short action locking breech system. The 1902 is improved in its disassembly from the 1900 because the 1900 has a little pinhole here, and you have to have this very small, very exacting tool to be able to capture kind of the recoil spring to be able to take the slide off. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, and it's not the greatest, but the nice thing about the 1900 is that it's virtually toolish.
Toolish. That's fine. Smoking a pancake.
The nice
thing about a crepe.
The nice thing about the 1900 is that it's virtually toolless. So what we're going to do is, and I know YouTube doesn't like this, but guess what? We don't make any money off this. So we've got this plunger here, and it's kind of concaved. That is going to be able to be pushed down. You can kind of see that it's giving with me. You've got this locking block in the front kind of deal that keeps the slide on the frame. So we're going to push down, and then we're going to push this out. That locking block should be coming out. I've done this a couple of times. You might could tell. I'm not even looking at it. And there's your locking block. Now, this is an incredibly important piece of the
That's
gun.
a very important piece.
It's kind of crazy because you're like, oh, well, it's just another piece of steel. Well, brothers, it's important.
That's the most important
piece. This thing gets broken. This slide, as you'll see here, guess where it's going to come if you were to fire? It's coming right off the back of the, and excuse me, I made a big blunder here. Talk about rookie mistake, kept the magazine in there. That slide is coming right off the back of the gun. They changed that.
Yeah, they changed that. And guess why?
They changed that, yes. Now, I don't know how many people got smacked in the head. I know of at least one.
At least one.
But there's also a story that potentially it happened to John Browning at some point. I don't know that to be true or false. But now you'll see that we're here with the frame and the barrel assembly together. Now, here's the interesting thing. As far as where I can go now without tools,
Nowhere.
Can't. Yeah.
That's it.
This is as far as you can virtually go without starting to break out punches, without starting to break out screwdrivers. And that was a problem for the United States military. They did not like the fact that this took tools to be able to take apart. You'll notice some very, very cool, very reminiscent locking lugs there. No bushing. But you'll see here, and Crispy, you'll have to kind of, get in close. You'll see the path that the barrel takes as it goes down. Okay, you see that? On a 1911, it tilts in the back, okay? Now, I want to take this opportunity to expel some of my tism around these guns. In the world of the 1911, we understand that a consistent lockup results in good accuracy. Of course, that becomes a little bit difficult because of your bushing. Your bushing has to slide down the barrel as the barrel tilts up and then come back into the exact same position every single time. If you want a gun to function, you don't need it to be perfect, but if you want a gun to be highly accurate, you need to be perfect. Now, you might say, well, this doesn't have a bushing, it has this front link. Well, guess what? When this gun is in battery and the slide is forward and it's locked into battery, this gun stands at the exact same point at the top of the links.
Every single time. Yep.
It comes back the exact same amount, it comes forward the exact same amount. I have found from shooting, at least this one's bigger brother, the 1905, that this is an insanely accurate system. And while it may not be great for actual military use, as it's not, it is a pretty fantastic system in regards to actually shooting the gun, felt recoil, as we'll find with the 1905, because we will be shooting that. This is a very, very, very accurate, very enjoyable system to shoot, and very interesting. But the problem, of course, you can't service it.
Yep.
Changing barrels is very difficult. Fitting everything is very difficult. So while it is a good design in some merits, overall, not the greatest. And the coolest thing though from this too is you can kind of see the idea of the extended breech block. I mean, truthfully, the breech block where the sides and the top extend.
Yep.
And of course, to reassemble, we're just going to put the gun kind of from the back to the front here. It will kind of just lock
everything.
It locks itself. I'm going to lower that. And then this will only come in one way. So that's nice. And it should snap right in. I will say, over the 1900, that is an incredibly simple
Easy
way
disassembly.
to take the gun apart.
Well, but you also have to look at the other guns of the era too. So compare that to disassembling a Luger.
Yeah, absolutely not the thing you want to do.
No.
And I also want to take the note, you now have one. There is something mechanically, I don't know how I want to put this, mechanically satisfying about this gun's sound.
It does have a very, I don't want to say clunky, but it's a very positive engagement. When that barrel swings up there and it's got those three lugs and it swings up, it is locking into place. The hammer, the trigger, everything about it. I mean, they
have pretty good triggers, actually.
They have really amazing triggers. I mean,
for the time period.
For the time period, I'm going to be honest, like for today, this would not be a bad trigger.
No, it wouldn't. And we have to kind of take a note too. I want to kind of go through one more tiny thing with these guns.
Yep.
The 1902 is still a relatively reliable gun.
Yep.
At this point, I mean, there's really no big notes of it not being a good gun or it being a poor gun. But unfortunately, the Colt's manufacturing company, they didn't hit all of the things that the United States officers were asking for.
Yeah.
So, that is certainly an issue they would begin to rectify soon after this. So there are a few themes that are going to be recurring here in the story, and probably, honestly, the one among all of them is the question of caliber. And that's honestly a theme that has resonated to our modern day and continues today. People want to argue about caliber. They don't understand 45 ACP is their answer. It's not this hard. Okay?
There is no question.
45 ACP is the answer. So with that, of course, 100 years ago, they're having the same argument. Believe that? So the U.S. Military trials for the 1902, of course, they come up short. They're still, Americans are still not really on the automatic train, and they definitely don't like that it's a 38. We'll talk about that later in the series. Across the pond, though, the British, they like it. They do like it. Their big problem is, and keep in mind historically, the British at this time, the British are controlling an empire.
Yes.
And when you control an empire, you have to shoot a lot of indigenous people. Let's just be honest. I'm not even trying to be funny. That's just historically what happens.
Yep.
You get into fights with indigenous people. And as we'll find, when America becomes an empire, typically those indigenous people use guerrilla warfare because they're, of course, not going to take you on in a head-to-head, European-style fight. So handguns become a lot more important. And what the British were finding were, believe it or not, big calibers stop things.
Yes.
Big calibers stop things. They found this out, and that's why when you see British military handguns at this time, 4.55, 4.75, or 4.76, excuse me, big calibers. And they actually at one time, this is a little bit of a side note, they actually at one time did test with a full wad cutter cartridge in the 4.55. And let's just say that there was a convention to discuss what was allowed in warfare, and that was one of the things they were like, you can't have that.
Early war crimes.
Yeah. So anyways, ultimately, though, the British found that the 38 caliber, they were not interested in anything other than a 40 caliber.
Interesting.
So in America, despite the fact that we were fielding at this time a 38 caliber double action Colt revolver, similar feelings were being expressed about we want a bigger caliber handgun. Colt Single Action Army has at this point been reissued in some small numbers, as well as a brand new Colt Model 1902 revolver, sometimes known as the Alaskan, sometimes known as the Philippine model, a really interesting looking gun, but double action 45 Colt. Colt attempted to size up the 1902 into the again, we got to give a shout out to the William Goddard government models book. This discusses all of this. The 41 Colt, they were trying to make a rimless 41 Colt for the model 1902. It was too much cartridge for the design. And all is well because, of course, we'll find that 41 wouldn't have cut it anyway, so it's fine that they didn't go very far with that. The twin link parallel drop barrel, it cannot handle the stress that a big caliber round puts on it. So we'll kind of stop the history there of the development just because we, of course, have to move on to a different pistol to do that. But I want to quickly, if you're interested in ever owning a 1902, which as far as the guns that
we're talking about right now,
this is the most attainable.
This is the easiest one to get.
I want to say 18,000 units. I could be wrong. That sounds really low in the grand scheme of guns, but honestly, in the grand scheme of these guns, that's pretty high. So production continued into 1928. Of course, it would slow dramatically, especially after the First World War. I mean, no one really was wanting to go off and buy one of these guns.
Yeah.
It was, as I mentioned, it was replaced altogether by the Super 38 cartridge. We'll one day have a video on Colt Super 38s and the Super 38 cartridge, and maybe I can even talk Nick into reintroducing the Super 38.
Not a chance.
There are a couple of changes where we want to talk real quick. I want to quickly, let's discuss let's go serrations first. So this is a virtually first-year gun. I mean, this is a 1903 gun.
Yep.
This actually still retains the pinhole from a 1900 to be able to take it apart. It still has the pinhole.
Even though it's not used, it's still there because they have the tooling for it, and that's what they're making.
I believe a gentleman at Springfield Armory has suggested the cocking knurl, which is absolutely one of the sickest things ever.
Yes.
I love a 1902 with front knurling. I think it is just so epic, so epic. But anyways, so of course, those would eventually be turned back to the rear of the slide.
Yep.
The rear of the slide. That scared the hell out of me.
Yep.
The rear of the slide. And also, you will notice these kind of cock serrations show up around 1906. These came from the Colt Model 1905. They were the triangular biased cocking serrations that obviously we would come to know in the 1911.
Yeah, well, and going back to this front knurling here, and this specific pistol, we do have the Colt letter. So if you have an old Colt, definitely connect with them and get the entire history through a Colt letter. This pistol was shipped on October 28th, 1903 in a shipment of 140 pistols to Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company, London Agency, in London, England. So Eli was talking about British contract being very interested in these pistols. This pistol went to London, England. It has all of the proof marks that occurred that when they brought him in to proof the pistol. It has all of those proof marks as well.
Yep, and that is incredible. That gun is just absolutely.
And one other thing on front knurling, we loved it so much we put it on our gun of the month previously, the Cabot 1902. So that is just a real cool feature.
Absolutely. That gun actually came into fruition right up the road here. We were on our way to the airport from the church the last time we were filming, and we stopped at the gas station. And I was like, what if we made 1902?
Voila, gun of the month.
Truthfully, it's crazy. So, of course, as we mentioned earlier, we just want to reiterate, the Colt 1902 did, in fact, improve upon the Colt 1900. You had the addition of the slide stop, which allowed for a one-handed operation of the gun. You can showcase that on yours if you'd like.
Well, I could showcase it, but I got these slippery gloves on, so right here.
Yep. And so you can now lock the slide. You now know when it's empty, and you can release it one-handed if you wanted. We're not going to do that here,
yep.
But you can release it one-handed if you want. You also had the lanyard loop, the longer magazine, and you add the addition of one extra round as well.
Yep.
And of course, also the stocks would go from wood to kind of that Colt plastic, which is pretty cool, which is really cool. Now, we talk about those changes. We also want to discuss the changes that happened within the 1902 itself, because that's important. As we mentioned before, the 1902 stays in production until 1928. What's it replaced by? We hinted at it before, the Colt Super 38. The Super 38 is one of my favorite guns of all time. I recently got a pre-war Super 38, 1931 dream gun of mine. Exquisite gun. Maybe one day I can talk Nick into do a video on that. Also, maybe even bringing Super 38s back to Alchemy.
Yes to one, no to two.
Come on. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Anyways, the Super 38 supersedes the 1902 and puts it out of production officially. Now, in that time period, you saw a number of changes within the 1902 product line, but the cool part about those changes are they are indicative of the development of the 1911. What's that mean? Let me tell you. You see, as we started with the 1902, you had that front knurling, that front cocking serrations. The Army really wanted that. Well, they kind of got away from it, especially as they shortened the gun on another one called the Colt Model 1905. They shortened the gun up. I think they were kind of like, we're starting to get crowded up there at the front. I'm not 100% sure where the Connect went to put the serrations back where they were initially. But when they did, they decided to go with a biased triangular serration. Now, you will know this because it is the same serrations used on the 1911. But as we can see with your model, 1909 manufactured.
Yep, 1909 manufactured.
And 1919 manufactured, you will see that it uses 1911 style serrations. Now, let's understand this about the Colt Manufacturing Company. If they can cross up operations on a machine across product lines, you bet your ass they're going to do
I think they had written, waste not, want not.
Waste nothing. And so that actually goes into the hammer. Now, you'll notice we talked early on in the 1900 video about that really high spur hammer, and I kind of mentioned, but again, we're limited with the examples, but I kind of mentioned that they would eventually go to a smaller hammer. This is the stub hammer that they went to after that really high spur hammer. Well, guess what they realized? We want to be able to cock these hammers under stress.
Not so good.
Geometry tells us this is not a good force for cocking a
Correct.
hammer. So, by the way, on the Colt Model 1905 military contract model 1907, we'll shorten it to model 1907, they reintroduced a lower spur. And guess what? All of the guns for the pocket hammer and the 1902 now have spur hammers because they've used virtually the same spur hammer.
Yep.
You'll notice it's much lower than the early 1900, and it's very actually quite pleasing to cock. But anyways, the markings the markings were also simplified as well. And then one other very small change that really you wouldn't notice if you didn't know is the slide stop on the early you mind showing the camera there, Nick? The slide stop on the early 1903s and 1903s.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 1902s. I apologize. So many 1900s. You'll notice that it's kind of split on itself and kind of that spring pressure force is on its own deal, right? Kind of a fragile situation. When the 1905 came out, they made a solid piece here, as you can see. They made a solid piece and kind of have an internal spring there. So they actually did change that, which is a very small change, I know, but definitely a
something
change.
notable, yeah.
Definitely something to note. So with that, it's estimated, get this, 13% of production, very small number, but 13% of the production for 1902s were sent to Mexico.
Interesting. So
Viva la Revolucion.
So
You know what I mean?
we're saying that a 38 caliber
yep.
automatic has been there for longer than the 38 Super was around.
Absolutely.
I like knowing
absolutely.
that. There's some historical reference here.
And well, you can imagine the Mexican Revolution, which took place pretty quickly after production of these guns, that disrupted obviously the flow of arms to Mexico, and also. Keep in mind, folks, we were kind of on the team Revolucion as the United States, and then Pancho Villa comes across the border and burns Columbus, New Mexico. Kind of not a thing to do if you want us on your side, and we send Blackjack Pershing after his ass. That's a whole nother story. Anyway, so you can imagine relations between Mexico and the U.S. at that point, not great. Colt's not really going to be,
Producing guns
for him. So, like I said, roughly 18,000 1902s were produced. You can kind of do the math on that, and that's how many went to Mexico. And actually, those guns in the collector's market, they actually do command a little bit of a premium. And even funnier is I've seen two Mexican contract 1902s, both nickeled, both with Eagle gold stocks.
Because why not?
Because Mexico.
Because.
And it's just, I call a spade at this point. Of course they're going to do that. But anyways, it cracks me up. I love them. They have great taste in guns, obviously. Big Colt fans like myself. But yeah, so the Colt 1902, that's kind of where we're going to wrap that up because the next iteration of the Colt story is probably one of the most important. The biggest leap yet.
The biggest leap. Yep.
So we're going to get ready for that. Guys, thank y'all so much, truly, for coming on this journey with us, allowing me the opportunity to kind of dispel some of this. Understand that one YouTube video is not going to give you everything you need to know. I understand this. Books, physical books, are going to have more information you can ever find on the internet.
Yep.
So go out. You want to get the William Goddard government models. You want to get the Guns of John Moses Browning. Required reading if you're a 1911 guy. You want to get some of these book Clausens. I unfortunately can't afford a Clausen, but I will get one day. And there's so many other of these reference books that you want to seek out to get all this information. Another really good place, and probably one of the best places on the internet, if you are going to look for more information, is CN Arsenal's YouTube channel. So check them out as well. Guys, it's the 1905, the first 45 ACP. You think I've been jacked up thus far. Now we're getting to my favorite caliber. Let's go.